Okay, so I'm thinking go to the senior members of the community that may have the opportunity or even the wherewithal, the knowledge, the historical knowledge, and if they can partner with the child, it doubles the workforce that's looking to complete something, and it really is a good sharing.
Well, that's particularly good if that site isn't there anymore. So we have the picture in the archive, but it's since been knocked down, and now it says ye old colonial village. It's nothing. It's a modern. It's a glass apartment building, like maybe where your new office is going to be. That happens a lot. So they can say, oh yes, this is where this used to be, and whatever it was. Yes, it doesn't necessarily matter. The point is to get people thinking about the history of their own village, walking around, taking these pictures, writing it up, getting them articles in the newspaper, and just being connected with it. And the last thing I want to mention, and I'll thank you for giving me this time, is now there are apps available for free that have already been written that you can use to load information about your village. I mean, a map showing the streets, showing the buildings, and so forth. I've seen it in Albany. I was at a presentation of historians, and a person in Troy has created that program. They're doing it in the executive business program in Rochester for Wayne County upstate. So this is already out there. So we can go and I think can create this app. I understand from lunch that there's a new mural being created at the map at the Clay Art Center of the town. That seems like a great opening, might be a great opening shot screen for this app to show Portchester. And then you can look at the different buildings. And that will be an opportunity for people to load these photographs of the different buildings, to put in oral histories of what happened in those buildings, and just to create a full experience. Certainly Capitol Theater, a lot of history there, no doubt, from the 20s on, and just a way of saying, this is our town, this is our community, and we're going to be in the 21st century now, but we're not going to forget the 16th, the 17th, 18th, the 19th, 20th centuries either. So those are the things we talked about, and I'd like to go ahead and make happen with the blessing of the board as the Town of Orion project. So when contacting people, it's not just me doing it personally, it's doing it on behalf of the town.
So please don't go anywhere. Any questions from the board?
I think, of course, I'd like to just thank you for the amount of time that you've already put into this, and I think all of these sound obviously excellent. My concerns are more from an administrative standpoint and the cost that's going to be associated with some of those larger projects. I mean, I know for us, where does that fall in the budget? Do we have budget to even designate to support some of these projects, such as flashbacks? And we have to talk about the logistics, how we can support you financially.
Well, flashbacks is the real cost one of any of these right now, and that Camille is going to come up with a budget for that. But we need to find out from the schools what the situation is, because most of them are going to have to bus to get to the Capitol Theater in some way, and that's cost.
Right. So I want to be upfront and honest with everybody and find out what it is we can.
That's why I contact them now, so we can find out.
Absolutely.
And they can start thinking about it, because September is too late. Well, one possibility also for flashbacks is that we would produce a program for that, which would have ads in it as well.
Right, do a little fundraising.
Do a little fundraising.
I would say, I'm sorry, guys.
I was going to say, I think all these are great, wonderful projects, but I think that you need to pick the ones that you really want to work on, because I think you have a lot, and I think if you have too much on your plate, then you really won't be able to get it all done. So I think you need to kind of pick the ones that you really think are the best ones and go with those.
I agree with what Councilwoman Collins and Councilwoman Mendocino is saying. The one thing that I will say, though, is two items. One, they're all worthy, but I think Peter was also, a lot of those items he was projecting into 2014 and beyond. So even though the list is healthy, the actionable item on each one of those items may not happen for over 12, 16 months.
Right, I tried to deliver to you,
correct.
present these in sequential order, chronologically, with Founder's Day being the most pressing one immediately,
Right.
because it's June 29th, and then flashbacks definitely being the high priority item that will take the most planning and organizing to make happen. A lot of the others we talked about working with the school and discussing what they want to do.
Very good. And then I'm going to, the second part I want to, is maybe you could speak with Mr. Mecca. Mr. Mecca was successful in the past with securing grant monies that had to deal with historic items in the town of Rye. Is that correct?
That's all preserving,
Well,
strictly
Yeah,
here's
there's a lot
I'm
of
going to talk.
preservation funding.
You're right. Well, I'm going to talk about grants later on as well. But Nick, if you could just get those resources to Mr. Feynman, because preservation of our history, the town's history, isn't necessarily just a document. It could be the preservation of a monument, and I think that was also part of the scope as a monument as well.
My big problem there is the town really doesn't own any of those. The only thing the town owns is now is up in Crawford Park. The rest are really owned by the villages.
Right.
But we can maybe set up a meeting with Linda from State Archives, and maybe we can find some
Right.
historic channeling for grants or
Well,
whatever.
certainly the next step, or a next step, would be going to the villages themselves and getting them to come on board the way you did with the sale of the garage.
Okay, so what we'd like to do
They
then?
need to be involved as well as the school system.
Understood. So
But
what,
just to give you an example today, some of you may know Jim O'Hanlon, they have a project coming up in January where they're going to have a series of meetings on the 5 major churches in Portchester and Rye. That's part of the walking tour and the community involvement. They're going to do them over 5 Thursdays. It could be done in one day. And we want to have the civic organizations, the Clay Center, would be willing to participate and talk about what they're going to do. So we want this to involve the civic organizations, the religious organizations in the community as an opportunity for them to present who they are and to be available, sort of be open. And set up, organize a program so you can go visit these different churches and these different groups.
so what I'll do is we'll entertain a motion. Obviously, it's not an agenda item, but an informal motion from the board to give Mr. Feynman the support of the town board to go forward on these items. That obviously anything that's going to look to occur, any funding, needs to be brought to the supervisor's office where we could take specific action or help find funding. So do I have some kind of a support for Mr. Feynman?
I'm just wondering if there's any clear, specific task-oriented item that you need us to say needs to be fulfilled, or that you're specifically looking for.
Well, what I'm looking at here is you have the Founders Day celebration, and you have flashbacks in September.
Those would be the two
Those
right
are
now.
Those are the two
Urgent.
that
Flashbacks, like what would you need us to specifically do in order to support you, is the question I
if
would.
I remember, Mr. Feynman mentioned that what he needs for us to do is to pretty much hurry up and wait. That Camille Linden needs to outline what she needs from us working with the Capitol Theater, and then they're going to provide us a list of what they need, and then we can take an action. So I'm sure that in July.
Well, I'm also
Well, I
asking,
think the only thing we really need to do is to take action on the June 29th issue at this point.
well, I'm also asking that I'm authorized on your behalf to contact the school superintendents.
Yes.
Again, so they know I'm not just doing it as an individual, but I'm doing this as a
On behalf of the town of
project.
Rye, correct. Do we support that
Absolutely.
as part of the board? Very good. You have our support, and then I would say, starting tomorrow, reach out to Bishop and Mr. Thomas and find out the schedule for Crawford Park. All right?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Feynman. Additional comments from the public? No, we're on that now. Okay. That's okay.
I don't have an agenda.
You don't have any-
Lunch.
Sure.
See, the meeting was a little longer, even with trouble.
That's okay. All right, so the next resolution we're going to go to is Resolution B. And this deals with the sale of surplus inventory. And what I'd like to have Hope do is, if we can read this resolution, and then if there's a motion in a second, we'll discuss it in greater detail. Okay?
Whereas the town board of the town of Rye has reduced expenditures over the past several years, and whereas the town board of the town of Rye has eliminated the parks department in order to save money, and whereas the town board of the town of Rye has identified the equipment attached thereto as Schedule A as surplus equipment no longer necessary for town operations. Now therefore be resolved that the town board of the town of Rye shall sell said equipment as surplus property, and be it further resolved that the town board of the town of Rye here authorizes Supervisor Joseph Carden to place the equipment up for sale either by auction or by advertisement. And be it further resolved, the town board of the town of Rye hereby authorizes Supervisor Joseph Carden to execute any and all necessary transfer documents to convey said surplus equipment to the approved purchasers. And be it further resolved that the town board of the town of Rye, that the town of Rye Supervisor Joseph Carden shall report to the town board on the status of the sale and the amounts received for each piece of equipment sold herein.
Okay. So do we have a motion for this resolution?
I think we have to be a little bit more specific whether we're going to do an auction or by advertisement. I don't think we should just leave that up in the air. We should make a decision on how we're going to do it.
Well, first here's what we can't go forward with that until we deem that the actual items are surplus. So if the board right now determines that this is not surplus, it doesn't make a difference what we think. So that being said, do we have a resolution to identify the items on this list as surplus equipment?
So,
Do we have a second?
second.
Okay, good. On the question, now I think we should discuss this.
Okay.
Okay. Well, originally, well, first of all, the list. Does anybody have any questions regarding the items that are on the list?
No.
Okay. Originally, Bishop and I discussed a couple different options when it came to selling the surplus items. One option was an auction company. The obstacle that I found with the auction company is that you provide them with the information and the pictures, it goes up on their site, and items like these, I researched their site, sat there for months and months and months, and then you have to, readdress it, second, and you see the ones that have been sitting there forever because they're reposted and reposted. This equipment, the longer this sits, the worse it becomes. Obviously, the value is reduced. I feel, and I'll yield to Bishop. I know that he has some good experience in this with his facility management background. I feel that we should first publish the list of items that are surplus, publish it in the local papers, put it on our website, and then I think from that point forward we'll create the interest. We understand what the amount of the value of these items. Fair assessment. It's difficult to value the items with and this is a discussion that Councilwoman Mendocino and I have had, and I wish Mr. Markowitz was here. It's hard to put a value on something unless it sells. So it's kind of like real property, kind of like your home. You have an understanding of what it's assessed for, but you really don't know what that true value is until it's sold. And that's kind of where we are. But I think that we have enough local business owners in the town of Rye that would be interested in many of these items. And it's been sitting there, and I think that we can go forward with advertisement first. And if the advertisement option does not work well, we can go to auction. And this auction is easy enough that we can do this in-house. We can set up a day at Rytown Park for the vendors to go and look at the equipment, and set up a day at Crawford Park for the vendors to go look at the equipment, and then we can meet at 10 Pearl Street one night with the vendors, and we can auction everything off and take care of everything in one shot. So that's my opinion. but I don't know if you have any questions on it.
How did we decide what we're keeping? Like, why would you want to keep stuff that's in poor condition?
Well, that particular tractor you're mentioning is 1981. It is in, it operates, and it is the only motorized piece of equipment that we can use right now to operate the sand break for the beach.
No, I was actually looking at the 4 club car golf carts.
Okay.
Those are the ones that are at the beach?
Those are the ones that are at Wrightown Park, and right now there are 3 that operate and 1 that does not operate.
And Bishop, I'm just going to cut you off there.
We don't need to get it.
No, but I want to let you know, and just for the public, the reason why we have to keep these items is because there isn't enough money in the Wrightown Park budget to purchase new. So we have to maintain with what we have now. And
So
that's-
basically, this is an overall equipment list of everything we own.
Everything.
And it specs out what is being utilized and what is just sitting, which is what makes those items surplus.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions from the board? Okay, so then for Resolution B, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Very good, thank you. All right. Okay, Bishop, we'll start working on this by Monday?
Yes, we can tailor
And
it.
when I say me, we, mean you?
Yeah.
All right. I'm not one of those people that say we, meaning you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we have correspondence from SER of Westchester. Hope you'd like to read that to us?
Okay, they're addressed to the town of Wright Council. We are writing to you regarding the rent of the office rented by SER, we call it SER, at the town of Wright office building on 10th Pearl Street in Worcester. SER is requesting a reduction in the amount of rent charged for our office space. We had applied for several grants, but at the present time have received none. In addition, we have not received any donations due to the present economic conditions. We had hoped to count on the support from these sources to allow us to continue our service to this community. Sir, kindly request that the board consider lowering our rent for the remainder of our lease. Due to the present financial climate, the most we could afford to pay is $300 a month. Otherwise, unfortunately, we will have no other choice than to vacate the premises. We were looking forward to continue to be the tenants in our present office, and consequently to continue with our mission of serving and assisting the children and the youth of this community. Thank you for taking the time to consider this request. We look forward to hearing from you. And respectfully, it's Carmen DeCresenzo. I'm not sure if I like that.
Yeah, I think that's it.
DeCresenzo.
Okay. Bishop, what are they currently paying?
$500 a month.
They're paying $500 a month.
And how much is left on the lease?
Don't hold me to it. If I remember correctly, it was a 3-year lease agreement, and I think there's a cancellation provision in there of 90 days.
Oh, they have another 2 years, how much they have left?
They are about a year into it. I mean, they moved in about the same time, or this time last year.
Okay. If we didn't have all these moving parts, I would say to contact our realtor and see if we could get someone there for $400 a month. But obviously, it sounds funny to say that, right? I have no problem with going to $300 a month.
Well, here's the reason why I don't have a problem with going to it, because we don't know what's going to happen to them if we should move forward. So they're in a little state of flux as well, knowing that we're looking to possibly sell 10 Pearl Street. So they might have to vacate sooner rather than later anyway, regardless. So I feel like as a courtesy to them, not knowing whether or not we would be landlords soon, I'd be happy to accommodate their request.
Just a correction on that, I believe that the lease will supersede the sale of the
Will it?
building.
Oh, I
so
thought we
that
had the cancellation
any
policy.
owner may need to abide by any current lease arrangement instead of made.
Oh, it's 90 days.
Yeah, we can tell them, right?
We can tell them 90 days.
Right,
So,
that's what I'm saying, we have the
I mean,
cancellation
we're not close to that sale yet, the sale of that property yet. And so, if we get to that point, we have a date where we're going to close. We're going to make sure that 90 days before that we execute. on that lease and let them know that, the space is not available. But till then,
Is that a two-way 90-day clause?
Paul, question from Councilman Nioris.
Okay.
Is it a two-way 90-day clause where we
Either
can?
party can escape.
Correct.
No, we don't let them out. One way. On the equipment? No, you.
No, not the equipment, no.
I'm sorry.
We're talking about the lease is 10 Pearl Street with SER.
Well, the lease is only for a year, so,
Sure.
usually it's a year, yeah. The last one we did, I don't know, we're in the middle of the lease now.
I think we're in the middle of the lease term, and I think we signed a 3-year lease with
Okay.
the Council of Community Services, and I think we also did same thing for SER.
Yeah, I think both can get out, I'm not sure what the time frame is, but at this point, are we doing an extension, or we're just lowering the rent?
Well,
Because if we're gonna move, we have to, notify them.
I'm going to tell you what I would like for the board is to approve the $300 a month, and that for the July meeting, give us a report prior to the meeting, send us an email, let us know what the parameters of that lease are.
Okay.
So in July, we can make a solid decision on facts. Is that okay with the board?
I mean, certainly this
And
doesn't
then also my
impact our
question is, if we're gonna lower the rate, and you change the lease, we have to write in the lease.
Yeah, we have to have, at the very least, we have to have an addendum to the existing lease
Right.
modifying the rent clause.
So perhaps we could look into approving at $300 a month, and if we need to amend the lease to,
State clause.
Yeah.
getting late, not maybe we're not working.
There's
Okay,
proper
you know what it is?
consideration for that.
It's very hot in here. Yeah,
All right, well then just move it.
I'm trying my best. Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to have Mr. Noto review the lease and make any necessary changes and addendum to that lease to reduce the rent from $500 to $300.
And to ensure that we have an escape clause on our end, should we sell the building, as to not transfer that tenant at $300 a month onto.
Well, just so you know, if we sold the building, a potential purchaser could take subject to any tenancies, and the lease would run out, whatever, so.
Yeah,
We'd work it out. I mean,
yeah,
we're not gonna put them in the street.
We're not talking that this parcel is being rented by IBM.
Right, I mean, just because we sell the building doesn't mean all the tenants are on the
Okay.
street, that's all.
We're okay. All right, folks, so I'll entertain a motion to give Mr. Noto the authority to act appropriately.
Sounds good.
Very good. A second?
In regards to the SEO, yes.
All in favor? Very good. Wow. No excitement here. Okay, reports. The assessor's not here. Is anybody speaking on behalf of the assessor?
No.
Very good. Finance, Mr. Byrnes. Yep.
Just two quick items. One is that this is the monthly receivable report as of May 31st, and while we are doing a better job overall with our receivables, they're 2.6.8% as of May 31st. On the tax levies, which were about $165 million for this fiscal year. We have to have a make-whole number by October to the county of $11 million, so we will be exploring the option if we need to do borrow money in its hand and present that to the board in the July meeting, the facts, if that's necessary, because our fund balance is about 1.6 million, and we've made whole about 2.9 year to date. We have about 9 properties, of which one, I guess, closed, Locust Avenue, in June, but as of May, we had 9 properties with $337,000. Those were on page 2 for in-rent properties, and the value of those properties was $2.2 million. So the receivables outstanding to the value of those properties is about 15%. So should we sell any of those properties, take possession, try to sell those properties, we would try to recoup the 15% and then also try to make a profit. So try to sell those properties about 30% of assessed value, if not greater. The other item is that back last year in May, we had a borrowing of $2 million, which we ended up taking a band bond anticipation note that matures in October, on October 18th. And the board does not need to approve additional borrowing. Most of that borrowing was for Jefferson Avenue Street Bridge, which is about 1.7 million of that 2 million. We'll get an update from the highway superintendent in terms of if there's going to be any cost overruns on that project. But the decision we need to make is that will mature in October, is to roll it over for another year or to go to long-term financing. So there's no board approval because the board approved the borrowing. It's just a decision what makes the most sense financially, both short-term and long-term. But we will update the board in the next meeting, July.
Thank you, Mr. Byrnes. Any questions for Mr. Byrnes? Thank you. Receiver of taxes, Mr. Mecca.
Honorable Deputy Supervisor, members of the Town Council, just a couple of minutes to remind everybody that your village tax, if you are responsible to make the payments, is due. You should have received your bill. This year, the last day is Sunday, the 30th, so you can come in person and pay your taxes on a Monday. It cannot be postmarked on a Monday. It must be postmarked by the Sunday, the 30th, but you can come into the office and pay on July 1st with no penalty. Okay, any questions? You should have all received the bill. If you have not, please call the office and we'll send you out a copy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mecca.
Thank you.
Okay, Town Clerk Vespia.
I submit my report if you have any questions.
Very good, thank you. Town Attorney, Mr. Noto.
Nothing new to report, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Crawford Park, Mr. Nowotnik.
I think you have a copy of the report. We're doing fine. Revenue is down substantially. We think it's part of the economy, and we know for a fact it is the alcohol policy and the cost of that having an alcohol event brings to people. It adds about $360 per event. So that's a strong hurdle. As far as the mansion itself, I just want to mention to the two councilwomen, I knew you were going to ask the question. The painting of the buffet room, or the blue room as we call it, is ongoing right now. We anticipate it's going to be finished by Friday. So I would welcome taking you on a tour and showing you what the new look looks like.
What was the final price we ended up getting on that?
Final price was I want to say $2,600, $2,600.
Huge gap from
Oh,
the
it
original.
was substantially different from one of the first prices we got.
Okay. All right, well, as soon as it's done, let me know, and I'll be happy to put those pictures I'm working on in the corner cabinet for the final
Yes.
touches.
Okay. And Superintendent of Highways, Mr. DeCresenzo.
Oh, just real quick on Crawford Park, though, I do think we're going to need to revisit the alcohol policy and figure out what we can do there as far as fees, because these numbers are obviously not going up anytime soon. We're seeing a trend, a downward trend, and I think we need to either revisit the way we work it or something, or advertising, or would you agree that we have to talk about this at some point?
I think, Hope, please put the Crawford Park policy on the agenda for next month. And the way I feel about it, and really the change that that happened, I would not be in
Right.
favor of reversing the alcohol
No.
policy.
But maybe there's something we
Well,
can
no,
do
the
about
board,
rolling numbers
I'm only
in.
one vote. But I would not be in favor of reversing the alcohol policy. And the one thing that everybody needs to keep in mind when we look at these numbers is that the events, okay, every time there's an event like that, we're spending money on staff, and there's the impact on the facilities as well. So I kind of, and if people are paying attention, we really have not had the neighbors there complaining like they have in years past. And it's because we kind of control the environment at Crawford Park. So I think that was good, but
No, I agree. I think all these things are we're talking about,
Correct.
just to make sure we revisit it and we just are comfortable with our decision.
the key word that you brought up was advertising. So maybe, Mr. Lawyer did a spectacular job at Rydtown Park with advertising and that campaign that they put
No,
on
maybe
there.
we could target the right entities, daytime use of the events for community organizations or things like that that have a lesser impact on neighbors and so on, and yet we could still bring in some revenue and allow it to be used by the community the way it's meant to be.
I agree.
But again, just conversation that I think we should have.
That is a great idea. Okay, Hope. John?
Good evening.
Good evening.
You all have the report. Are there any specific questions?
Yes, where are we as far as finances for the Jefferson Avenue?
Right now, they're on target, as previously reported to the board. The only additional costs that we may incur are slight costs for the redesign of the bridge abutments after the sewer line was discovered.
Okay.
And it's only the costs that are related to the abutment designs that we would be responsible for. Any additional costs for the repair of the sewer line and all that work belongs to the Village of Mamaroneck.
Okay, very good. If you can get that to us as soon as possible, because as Mr. Byrnes mentioned, that bond is going to mature in October.
We should know shortly. They're working on some numbers, but it's from estimates are around $100,000 that we would have incurred anyway if we had known the pipe was there in the first place.
Well, isn't there, when contractors, or lack of builders, when they take on projects like this, isn't there some kind of insurance, or is it just no fault? Mr. Noto, do you know that answer?
No, they have to provide insurance and usually a bond.
Yeah, so they did a bid bond on this, and so I'm thinking that the contractor should be responsible in whole if there's something that they missed. I mean,
I don't know if it was all,
Mrs. Jones down the street wants to do work on her house, she's gonna call 1-800-DIG, right? And they,
Yeah, I wanted to just
I don't
bring
wanna
up,
recognize them. Is that all right?
That's fine.
All right. John, go ahead.
I can do some more research into that if you'd like.
And it's like me, I get no respect, don't worry about this. I'm like the Rodney King.
Bishop, would you like to elaborate? I'll recognize it.
is somebody going to...
Go ahead, Bishop, I'm joking with you.
We did have a conversation with Richard Slingerland, the village manager in Mamaroneck. The issue there is that there's a certain amount of responsibility that falls on the village of Mamaroneck in terms of the plans that were developed for the project and the scope of work that was developed for the project. The pipe that is in question was totally overlooked. It was not on a variety of plans. It is an older pipe. And although it maybe should have been picked up by somebody at some point in time, the village has more or less indicated that they are really responsible for providing faulty information to the contractor. Yes, on large jobs, contractors should validate and all of those kinds of things, but there's enough ambiguity at this stage that the feeling is the contractor is going to pick up the actual, what we would call the mistake work, but the additional beefing up, for example, of the abutments and things of that nature that would be required, even if you knew the pipe was there, that was left out of the specifications because they didn't realize the pipe was there. That extra work is what the $100,000 of our share is referring to.
Okay, so really, we're stuck with it. So if you could just get that information to us as soon as possible,
Okay.
and then let Mr. Mr. Byrnes know, because if we need to address that come October, we may be looking at an additional $100,000 or more. Okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Okay.
DeCresenzo.
And the wing wall project has been completed on Otter Creek, and we just got the final approval from our consulting engineer. So that project is done as far as the repair of the wing wall, and we're just waiting for some plans for the maintenance phase of the bridge itself, which we should have next month.
Fantastic.
Very good, thank you. Okay.
Love this guy, the best.
I know, they're really so organized and everything's always simple.
Comments from the councilpersons. Mr. Nyoris.
No comment.
Mrs. Collins.
No, I think I touched on everything I was going to comment
Okay,
on.
Ms. Mendocino.
No, good too.
Okay, I wanted just a couple quick items with regards to the town dissolution. The town dissolution obviously is where, you know, the session in Albany is coming to a close, and I don't see anything happening anytime soon with regards to the dissolution of the town. I do see the town making some changes, and I'm sure the board does as well, with where we're going to be, you know, working out of. I see 10 Pearl Street ultimately as an antiquated facility that really brings with it a price tag of probably about $1 million plus, maybe $2 million of capital expense to bring that up to usable space. The people that come to 10 Pearl Street have to park across the street and cross main thoroughfare, Pearl Street, which is obviously hazardous for many people in our community. The handicap access is not through the front door, and there's a low percentage of use of that actual facility. As was mentioned earlier, the town of Rye only uses about 1/3 of that space. So there's some important changes that are going to be taking place, but I don't see the town going away anytime soon. But one thing that I want us to focus on is there's a lot of opportunities, still opportunities for grants out there for our communities. And our communities are the Village of Portchester, the Village of Mamaroneck, where we are tonight, and the Village of Rye Brook. So what I want to do is bring that awareness, obviously, to the board again. And what we've seen in the past is villages not having the opportunity to apply for grants because they've met their threshold, and the entity above them, like the town of Rye, may still have the opportunity to be involved in some grants. And even though we may not have the personnel in place to support the grant writing and the processing and maintenance of those grants, possibly we can use employees from the villages that may benefit from them to work in conjunction with the town of Rye, really use the town of Rye as that umbrella to give that opportunity to the communities to access those funds. But we can talk about that in later on. But that's something I want people to think about, you know, when we talk about the dissolution of the town of Rye. If it doesn't happen, we still need to be able to put the town of Rye in a position where we can leverage the name, leverage the municipality to still benefit the communities as best we can, use it as a catalyst for funds for our communities. I also want to talk about the surveillance cameras that we installed at Crawford Park. If you've read the Journal News over the past couple of weeks, actually a couple of months, there's been articles, front page articles, about the keeping watch and cameras that are in the municipalities now in the parks. What I want the residents of the town of Rye to know is that we started that project, and we started that process back in 2011. And really, we were the trailblazers when it came to that. And I'm very proud to say that we had the foresight to make that decision and to invest those funds in our parks. And also at a very modest cost. The article the other day in the Journal News talked about cameras, and I forgot where it was, maybe Mount Vernon, and they spent $6,000 a camera. We're getting entire systems put in for for $12,000 to $25,000 for an entire system. So for the municipalities that are out there is paying $6,000 a camera, call the supervisor's office. Maybe Bishop can help you and help your residents so they have a lower tax bill. And finally, I just want to make mention, we talk about people in the community that are worthy of note, and many of us know Frank Barcella, and Frank's been a great neighbor to many of us in the community, and he's done some he's very benevolent for the most part, is supporting many programs. And one group that I know that he's been very involved with, which I just found out about with this past week, is the Saints Brigade, which is a drum and bugle corps that practices at Carver Center in Portchester. And I met Frank years ago when I played in the drum corps in Harrison with the Westchester Brassmen. And so I want people to just keep an eye out for that. There's a great musical entity in Portchester, and Frank Barcella and Bob Beatty from Portchester High School, they work tirelessly to make sure that programs like that are successful. And that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Thank you and have a good night.